Alright everybody, we're taking on another headlight restoration project, a headlight retrofit on a 2004 Acura RSX. Um, what we see here is a standard dedicated low beam, dedicated high beam setup. This car, if it has one fault, is that these halogen headlights that came stock have really poor light output, especially at night. So it makes driving at night very difficult. So we're going to take that project on. I'm going to put in some projectors. We're going to go with an HID projector setup. We'll go over the components a little bit later. But first, let's look at some of the challenges that this car has. One being that there is just not much space behind the headlights, neither side. So I have to find a place to mount the relay, and I also have to find a place to put the ballast. And looking at one other YouTube video, I think I found a place for the ballast. I'm not quite sure where the relay is going to go. Probably over here next to the battery. One of the major considerations is what do you get for your relay harness, and it's kind of an interesting system here. Both of the bulbs for this setup are two-prong, and it's actually an H4 plug, but the plug does not use the upper post, so it's just a two-prong. When you pull out the headlight bulbs, you can see it a little better, but it's just a standard H4 plug. So we're going to use an H4 relay harness, and I'm going to have to make a couple adapters. We're going to go over that too. So another challenge will be that I believe I am going to have to take off this bumper. So I'm going to go over that. Let's go take a look at some of the relay harness stuff that we have. Some of the adapters that I'm going to have to use. One of them being that since I am going to go with the H4 relay harness, it's going to plug into this. But what I have to do is take the high beam and low beam signals and bring them into the H4 system. I've also spliced off of the high beam because I'm going to run a dedicated LED high beam along with the bi-xenon projector, which is going to be on one side of the headlight. You can see right here, this is the standard H4 connector. On an H4 setup, this would be your ground, this would be your low beam, and this would be your high beam. So I'm basically adapting this setup here, which is stock to the car, converting it into something like this that will accept the relay harness plug. I believe you can buy these, but I went ahead and made my own. And of course here you see, I think it's called a 9004 connector. It's very standard now, and this is what my dedicated LED high beam projector is going to be plugging into. Alright, we're inside now, and I'm going to go ahead and show you this the new headlights that I bought. As you can see from outside, the car has some old headlights. I think one of the fenders was damaged in an accident by the previous owner. And there's one new headlight, one older one, one's very fogged over. So I went ahead and just took the expense of buying brand new aftermarket headlights. This one's available on Amazon. One of the features I do like about it is it does have this kind of blacked out edge, and the reflectors are still silver. So kind of a nice look. But it is an aftermarket, not an OEM Honda. But it does appear identical in every way. These are the headlight components that I'm going to be using in the retrofit. Right here I have my dedicated LED Morimoto Mini HB LED headlight. So that's going to go on, it's going to go on the high beam side of this retrofit. And right here I have the Mini D2S 5.0 by Xenon, and it's going to go on the low beam. I am going to operate it so that the high beam will activate. I'm going to have the solenoid, so when this goes into high beam, both the bi-xenon is going to activate, and then the LED is going to turn on and just give that extra power. One of the options is just to ignore this high beam side, and I want to fill it with something so that it has something there, and then get a little more light output if I can. So right over here you can kind of see I've got one headlight almost done, and you can see how it looks with both of those installed. For this install, I'm also going to go with a Gatling gun. I have not used these before. I will say that they're a very slim design. They barely fit over the D2S. It's kind of a pain in the butt. It requires a lot of trimming, and one of the other annoying things is it doesn't lock into the headlight, or it doesn't lock into the projector. So it's going to require probably some epoxy or silicone, something to be able to get that to fix it to the headlight. Also, because there's just a lot of gaps around here, and I am going to go with an LED halo mounted behind the shroud. There's just going to be a chance for some light leakage from places that I don't want. So I'm going to have to go ahead and fill in some of these areas right here with some Bondo and do some shaping and forming, just so I can get that to trim out really nice. Shop here, I got the headlight already set up on a little bit of a jig. What I'm doing right now is I've put the old halogen bulb into the housing. As you see, I've also taken off the lens. I'm not going to go through the procedure on how to take off the headlight lens. That's basically put it in a 225-degree oven for about 13 minutes and you can use a screwdriver and a putty knife to gently pry away the lens from the housing. And that comes off pretty easy. But now once we have this set up and I'm projecting my light onto the backside of my garage door, you're going to see roughly where the cutoff is. And there's also a slight step up. So I marked the step up and where the cutoff, and when I install the new projector and fire that off, I want that line to be just about exactly where that one is. I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing. I'm going to take this bulb out, move it over to the high beam side, and project that onto the wall. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to find a spot where that high beam is focused, where it's most intense. And then when I install my LED light, my LED high beam, I want that to be focused on the hot spot for the high beam. Another thing that I've got here, it's pretty nice, a little portable power supply. It's made out of an ATX computer power supply. You see these all over the internet. I can switch between 12 volts, 5 volts, and 3.3 volts. I got some leads that can go. That's a good constant power supply. Another way that I've done this is just run jumpers from your car battery to this. But you do need a good power supply in order to be able to fire this off. I got it set up now to project the high beam, and as you can see, I've got a hot spot. I'll try to zoom in a little bit here. I went ahead and marked that with an H. Actually, I'm probably going to move it down just a little bit, right about there. And now I've got my high beam hot spot set up. And now it's time to go ahead and take out the reflectors and start sanding, grinding, and getting the projectors mounted. Got the reflector, I got the housing off of the jig, and now gonna start getting this ready to do my grinding. First step is gonna be take off these screws and wires that hold on the halogen bulbs. I'm gonna have to sand this flat on the back, and then what will happen is this is the cutoff for the low beam. That's gonna go away. Also, I'm going to take this whole silver reflector housing out of the black housing, and to do that I've got the headlight adjustment screws. There's one here and there's another one on the bottom, and you can see it on the back side. There's this one here and this one here, and these are what you use to aim your headlights. And one of the tricks that I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and put a reference mark. I'm going to put a reference mark on each one of these, and I'm going to back them off. I'm going to back them off until they're flush with the little grommet here. And I'm going to count the number of turns, so that when I go ahead and put this back on, I want to be able to get this aimed exactly at the same spot that I had it when I had the halogen bulbs in there. I want to be able to put this aiming at the exact same spot, and so I'll go ahead and count it until I get to the right number of turns and have it in the exact same spot. When I did my other one, I think it was 15 turns until it goes flush with this plastic grommet. Let's see if it does it. Got the reflectors out, As you can see, I also took out the little low beam cutoff. And next part is going to be taking this belt sander, and I have to make the back side of the reflectors flat. When I put the projector in, I will be mounting a nut on there. I don't want this perfectly flat. I think the easiest way to do that is with the belt sander, and I won't show you how that goes, but I'll show you what the end product looks like. Back end is sanded off and nice and flat. You can also see right now I've went ahead and scribed a circle that I'm going to have to cut out using my Dremel. Basically, it's going to be the same size. I made a circle, centered it roughly in that area, and it's got to be able to allow this to go through and be able to fasten that on the back. The Mini high beam has a much smaller shaft here, so just have to do a little bit of cutting in here with a Dremel, and I should be able to have that rounded out so I can mount this through there. Hole is cut, and as you can see here, that should be able to slide in there just fine. And there will be a silicone gasket on the back of this projector. One other thing I'm doing before I put the reflector back in the housing is I do make a hole right here. This is where the wires for the solenoid are going to have to pass through, as well as wires for the LED halo. So you have to make another access hole for that. All right, let's go over the wiring that we need to do for this setup. I've drawn what kind of looks like one of the connectors that the female connectors that connects to your existing halogen bulbs. These are female connectors. They fit the H4 plug style, but they don't have the upper plug. But the two side plugs are spaced exactly the same as an H4. So in order to get this to work, the Acura has a dedicated low beam and a dedicated high beam. And we have to kind of marry the two of them together in order for the relay to work. And the way that I did it was on the car's low beam connector, I plugged the white wire from the Morimoto relay into this side of the low beam connector, and the brown wire into this side of the connector. And then on the high beam female plug, I put the blue wire on this side of the connector, and that got the bi-xenon projector it got the relays to activate so the solenoids could go up and down. And then for the solenoid wires on the projector, you have a white wire and a brown wire. And for the white wire, I connected it to the black wire of the harness, and the brown wire of the projector connects to the red wire of the harness. So I got the projectors installed, and now I'm looking at the cutoff. I've got it aligned just to where I want it to be. And as you can see, comparing to the old halogen, this is a much better light output, so I'm really excited about this so far. Now on to cutting the shrouds and getting those to fit around these housings. And of course right now I have the LED high beam on, and you can see how focused and the small area that is projecting onto the wall or the garage door. So, and of course as it goes farther out it's going to spread out, but there that is lit up inside the housing. Here we are looking at the final product. Both projectors mounted. You can see we have got the Gatling gun shroud on the D2S over here. We have our LED high beam over here. Did make a couple mistakes, I think, in the way I ordered this, and I kind of wish the seller would have caught it. But anyway, the D2S Gatling gun shroud does barely fit inside of this aftermarket headlight. It is so close as to be scary close, and if I had to do it all over again, I think I would mount this Gatling gun as far back onto this projector as you can possibly mount it, and that will give you just a slightly higher amount of clearance. On the LED high beam, what I would do is make sure you get the mini Gatling gun shrouds, because the regular Gatling gun shrouds are just a little bit too big. It just made the fitment just a little bulky. They do fit. You have to do a lot of trimming around the corners, and of course even on this side there's a lot of trimming that has to be done. But overall, I'm pretty pleased with the effect, the look of it, and of course we're going to take a look at the light quality here. Once it gets dark, I'll do a drive and you can see what that's about. As far as the aiming, it's always a tricky thing to aim these properly. I would say the optical quality, so the standard way to do an aiming is to put in the halogen lights and project against the wall and try to figure out where the cutoffs are. Honestly, I think that's just kind of a poor technique right now. I think the optical quality of some of these aftermarket lights is just not good, and the cutoffs aren't very good for the halogen beams. So I think there's going to be a better method. I can already conceive of a way to do it. That might be in another video. But essentially it just basically means taking the lens off and doing it kind of using geometry instead of optics to get the aiming right. On these particular headlights, there is an adjustment that lets you move them up and down, but there is no side to side adjustment. So obviously mounting them is of critical importance. You want to get your cutoff to be as level as possible, and then your final adjustments are up and down with the headlight. On the aftermarket headlight, there is another adjustment on this side that for the life of me I cannot figure out how it affects the overall adjustment of the headlight. I've played it up and down. It doesn't seem to have any effect on anything. But let's go on to the nighttime drive test, and you can see how the cutoff and light projection is. Low beams on right now. Switch to high beams in just a second. Pretty good illumination. Here we go, high beams. You see that traffic light? Now it's really illuminated. Traffic signs really reflect a lot of light back, so when you go to high beam, things get really bright. High beam, low beam, really bright. Really good illumination, far better than the stock. Here we go again. Here's low beams, stop sign ahead, high beams, low beams, bump,